So every once in a while, I come back to this chapter of the Bible. I'll just get reminded of it, or somebody will reference it, and I'll go, "Oh yeah, this is a really cool chapter." And I like it because it summarizes just a lot of what's already happened at this point in the Old Testament. So it's always a fun read. So this is Nehemiah chapter 9. Now, in the 24th day of this month, the children of Israel were assembled with fasting and with sackcloths and earth upon them. And the seed of Israel separated themselves from all strangers, and stood and confessed their sins, and the iniquities of their fathers. And they stood up in their place, and read in the book of the law of the Lord their God 1/4 part of the day. And another 4th part they confessed, and worshipped the Lord their God. Then stood up upon the stairs of the Levites Jeshua and Bani, Kadmiel, Shabaniah, Buni, Sherebiah, Bani, and Chenani, and cried with a loud voice unto the Lord their God. Then the Levites, Jeshua, and Kadmiel, Bani, Hashabniah, Sherebiah, Hodijah, Shabaniah, and Pethahiah said, Stand up and bless the Lord your God for ever and ever, and blessed be thy glorious name, which is exalted above all blessing and praise. Thou, even thou, art Lord alone. Thou hast made heaven, the heaven of heavens, with all their host, the earth and all things that are therein, the seas and all that is therein, and thou preservest them all, and the host of heaven worshippeth thee. Thou art the Lord, the God, who didst choose Abram, and broughtest him forth out of Ur of the Chaldees, and gavest him the name of Abraham, and foundest his heart faithful before thee, and madest a covenant with him to give the land of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, and the Perizzites, and the Jebusites, and the Girgashites, to give it, I say, to his seed, and hast performed thy words, for thou art righteous. And didst see the affliction of our fathers in Egypt, and heardest their cry by the Red Sea, and showedest signs and wonders upon Pharaoh, and on all his servants, and on all the people of his land, for thou knewest that they dealt proudly against them. So didst thou get thee a name, as it is this day. And thou didst divide the sea before them, so that they went through the midst of the sea on the dry land. And their persecutors thou threwest into the deeps, as a stone into the mighty waters. Moreover, thou leddest them in the day by a cloudy pillar, and in the night by a pillar of fire, to give them light in the way wherein they should go. Thou camest down also upon Mount Sinai, and spakest with them from heaven, and gavest them right judgments, and true laws, good statutes and commandments, and madest known unto them thy holy Sabbath, and commandedst them by them precepts, statutes, and laws, by the hand of Moses thy servant. And gavest them bread from heaven for their hunger, and broughtest forth water for them out of the rock for their thirst, and promised them that they should go in to possess the land which thou hast sworn to give them. But they and our fathers dealt proudly, and hardened their necks, and hearkened not to thy commandments, and refused to obey, neither were mindful of thy wonders that thou didst among them, but hardened their necks, and in their rebellion appointed a captain to return to their bondage. But thou art a God ready to pardon, gracious and merciful, slow to anger, and of great kindness, and forsookest them not. Yea, when they had made them a molten calf, and said, This is thy God that brought thee up out of Egypt, and had wrought great provocations. Yet thou, in thy manifold mercies, forsookest them not in the wilderness. The pillar of the cloud departed not from them by day, to lead them in the way, neither the pillar of fire by night, to show them the light, and the way wherein they should go. Thou gavest also thy good spirit to instruct them, and withheldest not thy manna from their mouth, and gavest them water for their thirst. Yea, 40 years didst thou sustain them in the wilderness, so that they lacked nothing. Their clothes waxed not old, and their feet swelled not. Moreover, thou gavest them kingdoms and nations, and didst divide them into corners, so they possessed the land of Sihon, and the land of the king of Heshbon, and the land of Og, king of Bashan. Their children also multipliest thou as the stars of heaven, and broughtest them into the land, concerning which thou hadst promised their fathers, that they should go in to possess it. So the children went in and possessed the land, and thou subduest before them the inhabitants of the land, the Canaanites, and gavest them into their hands with their kings, and the people of the land, that they might do with them as they would. And they took strong cities and a fat land, and possessed houses full of all goods, wells digged, vineyards, and olive yards, and fruit trees in abundance. So they did eat, and were filled, and became fat, and delighted themselves in thy great goodness. Nevertheless they were disobedient, and rebelled against thee, and cast thy law behind their backs, and slew thy prophets, which testified against them, to turn them to thee, and they wrought great provocations. Therefore thou deliveredst them into the hand of their enemies, who vexed them. And in the time of their trouble, when they cried unto thee, thou heardest them from heaven, and according to thy manifold mercies thou gavest them saviors, who saved them out of the hand of their enemies. But after they had rest, they did evil again before thee. Therefore leftest thou them in the land of their enemies, so that they had the dominion over them. Yet when they returned and cried unto thee, thou heardest them from heaven, and many times did thou deliver them according to thy mercies. And testifiedst against them, that thou mightest bring them again unto thy law. Yet they dealt proudly, and hearkened not unto thy commandments, but sinned against thy judgments, which, if a man do, he shall live in them. And withdrew the shoulder, and hardened their neck, and would not hear. Yet many years didst thou forbear them, and testifiedst against them by thy Spirit and thy prophets. Yet would they not give ear. Therefore gavest thou them into the hand of the people of the lands. Nevertheless, for thy great mercy's sake, thou didst not utterly consume them, nor forsake them, for thou art a gracious and merciful God. Now therefore, our God, the great, the mighty, and the terrible God, who keepest covenant and mercy, let not all the trouble seem little before thee, that hath come upon us, on our kings, on our princes, and on our priests, and on our prophets, and on our fathers, and on all thy people, since the time of the kings of Assyria unto this day. Howbeit thou art just in all that is brought upon us, for thou hast done right, but we have done wickedly. Neither have our kings, our princes, our priests, nor our fathers kept thy law, nor hearkened unto thy commandments and thy testimonies, wherewith thou didst testify against them. For they have not served thee in their kingdom, and in thy great goodness that thou gavest them, and in the large and fat land which thou gavest before them, neither turned they from their wicked works. So I just think that's a really good read from the Bible, and a lot of stuff that I connect with. The biggest thing that I take away from this is how much I can appreciate the way that they lived back then. It just made so much more sense compared with today. Just comparing the idea of kingdoms and the magic that was around, just because everybody was so much more in tune with the spiritual, and life was about God. And it and also just I guess one thing that I'll say before I forget about it, just thinking of living in communities like that where everybody, so I guess this is like a current event. You know the current event, it's just so political today, and I hate that. I would so much prefer to live in a kingdom with a king, and not this democracy BS where people have the illusion of being able to make a difference by screeching and voting. You might know my opinion on voting. I honestly think that they just don't even tally them. They just burn them, and it's just all a big show. That's my opinion. But anyways, before I forget, I really do, I look back on stuff like this and I'm like, man, what an amazing time to live in, where people could get united over things that mattered about God and repenting. Like, you just don't hear about this stuff. The only time you hear about this kind of stuff is in like cult. They try to make it seem like it's a cult thing for people to, I don't know, fast together and pray together And I just think that that's the type of community I would want to live in, just one that people do want to do big religious gestures like that, live spiritually. And anyways, uh, so one of those things was talking about confession. I mean, confession is something, repenting is something that gets forgotten a lot today. And so that's one, the fact that the community would get together and confess all their sins together, that's something that's very much lacking. So I guess I'll do it. And another thing that's talked about in this chapter is how God is slow to anger. And so that's what my confession is today, that I still have such a huge problem with being quick to anger. And uh, so that's my confession and what I need to work on big time. I can just get annoyed by the dumbest stuff. And God is slow to anger, and he proves himself. I mean, that's shown in the story here, how many times people turned their necks and God was still there. He didn't leave them. And God is very slow to anger, something that I need to do. And if I expect God to be merciful and slow to anger with me, then that's something that I should certainly show to other people. I shouldn't snap at people. I mean, here's the thing, especially when you're a parent, it's really easy to just start snap, like anything starts to annoy you. But how do you expect to be forgiven for all of your horrible sins that you've done in your life if you get angry at people for the slightest provocation? So yes, it's a very big deal to get mad at people over, to be quick to anger. It is a big deal, because if you are expected to be forgiven for the big things in life, then why are you getting so angry at people for little stuff? So that's my confession. I do think it is really easy to get triggered and annoyed really easily these days, but there you go, it's something to work on. And I don't know, it's funny because a lot of times I am just a super chill, relaxed person, and it is like you take it out on the people that you shouldn't. Like I take the quick to anger out stuff on, I take it out on my children, and that's a horrible thing. I should be even more forgiving to them. But it's hard as a parent. You get annoyed. It's very easy to get annoyed. Okay, I just wanted to talk about that before I forgot about it, because it was really important. The other thing, when I read this, the reading about them inheriting the lands that are all, the wells are already dug, the vineyards are already planted. It just reminds me of, the old world building idea, of course, the fact that there are all sorts of giant cities out there that have been around for a long time, and people just show up and they say, "Oh, I built that," or "My grandparents built that." That's been going on forever. And um, anyways, so, but the one thing, the big takeaway from that was the fact that they had so many fruit trees, and just that is what life should be like. There should just be, that you're in paradise when you don't have to worry about eating and sustaining yourself. Everybody has ample land. It's just, compare that to everybody has the growing grass on their lawn. Nobody, like, why doesn't everybody grow fruit trees? There should be fruit trees all over the place. It shouldn't be, if we are so technologically advanced, 2022, we should at least be doing good, as good as the people in the Bible, where they had plenty of fruit trees to eat from and nobody had to worry about it. Like the fact that fresh fruit is so expensive and hard to come by, but anybody can go grab a super ultra processed piece of crap for cheap. We're not living life how we should be. Well, I hope you enjoyed this chapter of the Bible and the ramble at the end of it. I just haven't done a video in a while, and I felt like putting something out there. So leave a comment. I hope you enjoyed. God bless everyone.